to be in the comfort of all of our homes, right? But the presentation that I have for you guys is a little bit interactive. So I'll start off with a little bit about me, and then a little bit about the auctioneer fast presentation that I'm going to give you in the next 45 minutes. Usually I have about 6 hours. So we're going to do our best to fill 6 hours into 45 minutes. And if you're a business person, you know it can be done. You just go to the Cliff Notes, right? So like Colleen said, my name is Cassie Shum. I'm a licensed social worker with Community Action, Wayne Medina. I've been with Community Action for about 11 years. And one of the big jobs that I do is that I oversee the social service aspect of the Head Start program. If you aren't familiar with Head Start has been around since the 60s, and it was part of the war on poverty with Lyndon B. Johnson. It looks very similar to the way that it was in the 60s, fortunately and unfortunately. Fortunately, because we had something really great going for us, so we know how to take care of children and pregnant mothers. But unfortunately, our income guidelines have not changed very drastically from the 60s. And we'll talk a little bit about the income guidelines. But for the most part, the Head Start program is aimed at helping women, pregnant women and children under the age of 5 get ready for kindergarten, as well as to stabilize and get all the community resources that they need once they go out into the big wide world. So a lot of my experience is from working with women in poverty and children in poverty. So I'm going to talk a lot about my experience. But the big thing about my presentation is that it's really important that you guys participate. So one of the things that I always have is the Zoom panic. I want to say something and I can't find my cursor and I don't know how to unmute. So use your little space bar. You can use it just like a walkie-talkie. So if you want to shout something out to me like, hey, Cassie, I don't agree with what you're saying, or hey, Cassie, I had a really great idea, then just hit that space bar or unmute yourself. This has to be interactive or it's going to be painful. You guys are going to be sitting there staring at me like, ugh, stop talking. So the first thing before we get into, what is poverty and like Colleen said, how do we kind of fit into that wheel as, middle class individuals who are trying to service people who live in poverty. The first thing that we're going to talk about is generalizations. I'm going to use some generalizations because I can't, in 45 minutes talk about every unique situation of people in poverty. So I'm going to generalize a little bit. And that's not to the detriment of the people that we're talking about. It is just to kind of make it more generalized statements so that we can all understand and then build on those examples. So the first thing is kind of how do you define poverty? How many of you guys work in social services? If you can give me I work in social services. Okay, a few of you. What does it mean to be in poverty? I think that it really depends on what your definition is. A lot of the people that we work with, feel that poverty comes in a lot of different forms, but the governmental definition of poverty is, poverty scale and where you fit into that income guideline. So first participations, first try, first test for you guys to unmute. A family of 4 would need to make how much money a year to qualify or to be at 100% of the poverty index? So 100% of the poverty index is what they consider to be the top tier of extreme poverty. So how much do you think a family of 4 would make to be considered extremely in poverty? The most they would be able to make?
25,000.
30,000.
Ditto. 25.
Agreed.
25.
All right. Wow. Okay. So you guys didn't need me today. I think that you all were right on the money. So it is 26,500 for a family of 4 to be at 100% of the poverty index. So a lot of programs have to hit that threshold. So a lot of programs have a lot of different eligibility criteria. So for the Head Start program, so for children who are coming in for the preschool program, they have to be at 100% or below. So we're working with the poorest of the poor, the neediest of the needy in our community. So to be at 200%, which is a lot of our programs. So 200% is usually Medicaid, a lot of the community action programs for utility assistance. A family of 4 would need to make about $53,000 a year, which is no king's ransom. $26,000 a year is pretty small. And if you guys know, what the average price for rentals in Medina County, you know that that's not going to get you very far. What do you think is the average price for a 2-bedroom apartment in Medina?
$10,000 a year.
$1,000 a month.
We got
$1,000 a
I
year.
would move there. I would move there. If it's $1,000 a month, I'm there.
750.
750 a month?
650 a month. 650.
So on average, the rental properties in Medina, and there's not very many, I mean, there's a few apartment complexes, but most of Medina is single family homes. It's about $900 a month.
Oh.
So another aspect to consider, so when you're thinking about poverty and you're thinking about, what is out there in Medina for individuals to access, you're thinking about rental properties. Sorry, that's my cat. She's about 24 years old and she has dementia. So she comes down with callers and she interrupts a lot of my meetings. So forgive her, she's elderly. She's not sure what time it is. But a piece of the rental crisis that's in Medina is that they're no longer taking individuals on the Metro housing voucher list because they're so backlogged for individuals to apply for those programs. So if you were lucky enough to apply for Metro housing, then you were lucky enough to get a voucher, which would mean that you would, have some utility assistance, you would have some rental assistance. But right now, so many of our communities are so inundated with individuals that many times it's a 2-year to 5-year wait list for those Metro housing vouchers. So that's a little bit about poverty scale and what it means to be in poverty by definition. So when you're thinking about poverty, you're thinking about Medina County, which is a very unique county. Where do you think is the highest concentration of people who live in poverty in your county? What town do you think is the highest concentration of poverty?
Medina City.
Okay.
Lodi.
Yep. Anybody else got any thoughts? I'm going to give it all to you.
Wadsworth.
Okay. So we'll start with Wadsworth. So Wadsworth's actually the smallest amount of poverty. So they only have about 6% of their individuals who live in poverty in Wadsworth. Brunswick is a close, so that is 7% of their individuals who live in poverty. In Brunswick, Medina City is 9%. And someone ding, 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 chicken winner, in Lodi, it is 14%, which is drastic. Compared to a lot of the other, areas in Medina County, Lodi is significantly more impoverished than the rest of the community. So, one of the things that I have heard, through, talking to people in the community is that, the Medina County Health Department had started to look at the health disparities of individuals in Lodi and kind of correlating the significance between these individuals who live in extreme poverty and the fact that they're not living as long as most other people in the community in the county. So they were saying that, they were making a correlation that people in Lodi live 10 to 15 years less than everyone else in the county. So when you look at poverty and you think about that statistic, you're like, whoa, why would that be? Why would people in poverty be living shorter lives? What do you think? What are some factors that you think might be part of why people in Lodi are living shorter lives than people in Wadsworth?
They can't acquire proper jobs. Literacy rates are exceptional there.
Mm-hmm.
Healthcare.
Yeah,
Lack of access to healthcare.
Nutrition.
Access to healthcare is interesting because there's a hospital right there, right? So access to healthcare doesn't always mean that people are getting the healthcare that they need or that they can afford. So access doesn't always mean healthier people, which is an interesting aspect as well. Education, absolutely. And there are environmental factors of people who live in poverty. And there's a whole, you could spin your wheels on a million different reasons and a million different correlations. But when you look at the trauma of poverty, poverty is traumatic. And when you have trauma and you have stress, your body reacts to that differently. You're not as healthy, you're not getting exercise, you have poor health choices. So there's a lot of factors that go into why that. Now, a big part of my job is to go out into the community and have conversations like these. And the conversations that we have, we call them bridges out of poverty. And what we do, we come in, we talk about, what is poverty like in your community, a lot like what we're talking about now, and coming up with some solutions. But I've done a lot of conversations in Medina, and almost every single time I have people say, there are no poor people in Medina. Why do you think that that aspect of even in Medina, there might be some poor people, or there aren't very many poor people in Medina? Why do you think that I might hear that?
Because we live in a bubble.
Yeah,
They're very shy, they're very timid, they stick to their own, they protect themselves.
sure. In Medina is rural. So when you think about poverty, and we'll talk a little bit about, what does urban poverty look like versus rural poverty, and that there is a piece of isolation. You're absolutely right. So that even in Medina mentality is something that we always discuss with individuals who live and work in Medina. My co-partner, who usually does my presentations with me, is from Nigeria. And so what he says is he talks a lot about the ostrich. You guys are familiar with the giant bird. It's like 8 feet tall. It is mad. It is big. And what does it do when it gets scared? It sticks its head in the sand, right? Even though that ostrich could beat you in a foot race, it could beat that lion up, but instead it chooses to hide its eyes, right? And sometimes we make the correlation between the ostrich to individuals who live in a community that is very wealthy, and you may not see the poverty. You don't see the problem. And that's not to say like that's wrong. It just is what it is. If it's something that I'm dealing with every day, it's not something that I'm seeing every day, then it's probably something that I have my head in the sand about. So when we're talking about not being able to see it, let's see if any of you guys have seen it. So in a community that is impoverished, what are some businesses that you might see in an impoverished community?
Food banks.
Dollar store.
Dollar store, always good one.
Check
Those
that.
check cashing joints that cash checks, those convenience stores that have check cashing and fried chicken and groceries.
Yeah, and they have it all. And you can buy your discount smokes, you got your liquor store. Absolutely. Yeah, let's one-stop shop it, because a lot of convenience stores are barely making it. They don't have a whole lot of money, to expand on, well, we're just going to do fresh produce, like Whole Foods. No, we're doing it all because we need to make some money at the end of the day. What other businesses do you see?
Those rent to own places like Rent a Center and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of what you're saying is the predatory loans and the predatory components that, the check into cash, the car title loan places, the appliance rental places, and those are incredibly predatory. And what they do is, they get people who can't afford those products. A washer and dryer at a rental appliance store are going to cost double what they would cost you and I, who have credit, who can go into Lowe's and get that washer and dryer that we need. Where people in poverty are kind of stuck to get these rental components, and they end up paying double to triple what the actual washer and dryers are actually worth in interest. And then if they don't pay, then they repossess them, and sometimes they'll even sue them for that amount of money. So they'll take them to civil court, which they can't afford either. If they couldn't afford a washer and dryer, they certainly aren't going to be able to afford court fees or a lawyer to go to civil court. So what kind of institutions might you see in an impoverished community? A lot of churches. Especially in towns like Lodi, you see a lot of churches who are the ones who are assisting individuals who live in poverty. What about housing? What do housing projects look like, or housing areas or housing communities look like in poverty? What are some things that you think of?
I personally think of like the slum landlords who buy a cheap house and don't fix it up, and they know they can still rent it out. I was just helping a client the other day, and she found this house. It was $900, and it looked like it wouldn't even pass inspection, but it was like $900 a month rent. Which is
$900 a month for something that is squalor. Should not support human life.
Hey, Cassie, we've got Gary with us, and Gary actually works for Metropolitan Housing.
Fantastic.
I want to make sure everybody saw his thing that he put in the chat. He wanted to support your point, Cassie, on Metropolitan Housing wait time list. But they last opened the wait list in 2018. but they were recently awarded 40 additional vouchers. So they're going to open the wait list this year and move through it again. And they also have subsidized housing.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Gary. That is information I'm going to pass on to my clients. Knowing that it's open and that we can start, getting people to apply as a. Thank you so much for letting us know. So yeah, I mean, housing where slumlords is a huge thing, and slumlords are, individuals who own properties who are asking an astronomical amount of money for a month's rent and then not taking care of the property. And I'm sure, as Gary can vouch for, when you have a metropolitan housing voucher and you have Metro, assisting with that rental property, you at least have an oversight. You have someone there who's going to see, make sure it's up to snuff, it's up to code, as much as they can. But when you have people who don't, qualify for vouchers or are unable to accept a voucher, a lot of times they're preyed upon by those slumlord landlords who are not going to take care of that property and are going to make you pay a lot of money for that property. What are the community conditions? What are some things that you see in impoverished communities?
Sometimes the properties aren't as well cared for. You're going to see a lot of outside of the homes, or windows that are in disrepair and such. I think we have the largest density of trailer parks, too. You're just going to see a lot of different kinds of things like that.
Absolutely. There is a lot of disrepair. There are, unkept yards, unkept, vehicles or things in the yards. And there's a big difference between, urban poverty and rural poverty. And when you think about a rural area and the community condition that you would often see, because a lot of people in Medina are rural, you're seeing a lot of single family homes. So you're seeing a lot of windows that don't have curtains, but they have blankets. I don't know if you guys been to try to buy curtains, but man, if I need to spend $45 on one panel curtain, I'm not going, if I didn't have the funds to do so, I'm going to be hanging a blanket over, over my windows. So, you have blankets over the windows, you have, cars that are in disrepair that don't work. There are toys and, things that are out on the lawn. One of the things that my partner, who usually does these conversations with me, talks about is when he had come to America from Nigeria, he and his wife were driving around and, they would see people's things on the tree lawn. And he would say to his wife, like, gosh, there's a lot of garage sales going on. Like, gosh, there's always people's stuff on the lawn. And he had asked me about that. He said, man, there's a lot of people's things on the lawn. I said, that's because they're being evicted. So oftentimes in communities, you're going to see everyone's worldly possessions out on the lawn because A, you don't have the money to get a U-Haul to even get it. So when you are kicked out and you do move, you can only take what fits in your Dodge Neon. And the other piece of that is once you're evicted, you're out. And all of your things are out, on that tree lawn. So, when you think about those community conditions, there's just a lot of aspects, and hopefully, next time you're in an impoverished community, you kind of take a look. What is different? What do I see, and what do I identify as, as different between, a middle class neighborhood and an impoverished neighborhood, or a neighborhood that lacks resources. So one big thing we're going to talk about is the benefits cliff. Has anyone ever heard of the benefits cliff or part of the conversation about raising minimum wage to $15 an hour? Sound like a familiar hot topic to everybody. So the benefits cliff is an interesting component. And I did some work with the College of Worcester, and I had some students come to me and say, hey, talk to us about the benefits cliff, this phenomenon called the benefits cliff. Which, then I had this like evil laugh, like, ha, 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 phenomenon. No. So what it is that, when individuals are working and they are in poverty, there is only one set scale of income qualifiers that you can qualify for EBT card or for your food stamps, for Medicaid, for childcare vouchers, for your metropolitan voucher. And if you make above that threshold, then you lose that service. So the benefits cliff, meaning that, people are, take a single mom of 3, she gets a raise, she becomes a manager at McDonald's, she makes $1 more an hour. That $1 more an hour now bumps her off of her childcare vouchers. So oftentimes what people do, and what I've had people do as my clients, is refuse a managerial position or refuse a bonus because it doesn't equate to the benefit that I'm getting. So I'm getting, an $800 a month voucher for my childcare that costs $1,200 a month, to the $600 a month that I'm going to make more as a manager at McDonald's. So people are having to be choosing, do I forward my career or do I lose the benefits that I need, because it doesn't equate. The raise is not enough. And the money that I'm making is not enough to get me where I need to go for that service. So oftentimes, our clients will say, oh, I had to cut back my hours because I was going to lose my childcare, or I was going to lose my food stamps, and my children were not going to be able to, have X service. And that's a really tough choice. And I think very often we think, well, all they need is better jobs. All they need is a little bit more money, but a little bit doesn't go a whole lot. So what is a livable wage, and why is this such a conversation between, the starvation wages or minimum wage, and, what is an actual livable wage? So MIT created this calculator. And what they said is that, by state, what would be a livable wage for someone who has a family of 3? So for a livable wage, and how they quantified that is they said, okay, these are all the things that it costs to live in Ohio: food, gas, utilities, retirement, and all of those pieces. And what they said was that a person would need to make $25.95 gross income for it to be a livable wage. So when you hear the conversation saying $10 minimum wage or $15 minimum wage, well, close but no cigar. And what is going to be a problem is if when we do increase to a $10 minimum wage, or we increase to a $15 minimum wage, and our government doesn't take 2 allotments, and these are, I'm not an economist, I'm just a social worker, but the 2 pieces that I see is that, one, our government would have to adjust those income guidelines for services. If they're going to make it $10 an hour, then they're going to need to make that adjustment, or a ton of people are going to lose their services. They're going to lose food. They're going to lose health insurance. They're going to lose those childcare vouchers. They're going to come off of Gary's wonderful programs at Metro. If they make it $15 an hour, we're getting closer. And still, that benefits cliff might be edging to them where it's not going to equate to the service. And they're going to end up being in poverty and struggling every day. The second piece of that is small businesses and people who can't afford to pay $15 an hour. They're trying to pay starvation wages because that's all they can afford. So the government is going to have to think of ways to help mediate that for small businesses as well, and help with tax cuts and things of that nature, so that $15 an hour, or really what a livable wage would be is $25 an hour, would actually be appropriate and would actually be doable without hurting businesses, without hurting, the people who live in poverty who need those services. See a lot of people saying yeah, this has happened. I've heard of people like this happening to them, losing their support. It's incredibly frustrating. It is really scary for people, and especially for the people that I work with. And I run several different programs, and we'll kind of talk about some of the other programs that I run, is that, we have women who really, really want to go out and be in the workforce, and they do a bang up job. And their manager says, you're doing an amazing job, and I want to offer you this position. And she has to refuse it. She's not able to better her career because all that her business, all that, her employer can afford is giving her $2 an hour raise. And it really is hurtful. And it's really hard for that woman to say, I can't accept that, when she knows that's her career choice. She would love to do that. But it's not going to equate to that service. It's not going to equate, especially childcare. If any of you guys have had to pay childcare lately, it is astronomical. I mean, some of the individuals that I work with are paying anywhere from $1,200 a month to $1,800 a month for childcare if they do not have childcare vouchers. If they have childcare vouchers, then at least they're able to pay a reduced rate. But I still have moms who work as a cook in Applebee's and are paying $900 a month for childcare. Like, how is that, affordable by any means?
Cassie, I've heard people say, well, they just need to get a second job or, work more and they'll be able to get through this time. What would you say to someone who said something like that to one of your clients? Just get another job, get a second job to help the situation.
So the way oftentimes how we perceive the solution finding, so what we like to call it is the nail in their head, right? Like, well, you have a nail in your head, like, duh, can't you see the solution of the problem? Well, you just have to work more. Oh, 40 hours a week. Well, you should just work 80 hours a week. Then you wouldn't be so poor. Well, I guess I would flip it on them like that, Colleen, and say, do you want to work 80 hours a week? Do you want to stand on your feet? The people who work at McDonald's work hard. I sit at a desk all day and, do my job, but, people who are out there like hustling, that's hard work and it's physically demanding. And when you hear someone say, well, hey, single mom, why don't you just get another job? And it's like, okay, well, so now I have to pay this childcare provider for this 40-hour-a-week job. And I'm going to have to find an after hours childcare provider. And if you can find one, good luck, because there's not very many of them out there. And I'm going to have to pay that much more for that childcare. So it is eye of the beholder, right? And we try to think that we can find the solutions for other people, but truly when you talk to people and say, like, what do you think is the solution to your poverty? They're oftentimes going to come up with a better solution than, hey, why don't you just work 80 hours a week? John, you have something?
Well, and if I understood what you said earlier, it doesn't really solve the problem, because working 80 hours a week at $10 an hour is going to put you at a threshold where you lose your benefits, but not enough to get you out of poverty. So all I'm doing now is working a lot more hours, paying more childcare, and ultimately making less revenue at the end of the year.
Correct. And I've been kicked off of my health insurance, and as have all of my children, because my employer is paying starvation wages and they're not paying me for health insurance. Or my health insurance premiums are so expensive that I can't afford them.
Cassie, I have an aha moment. I can see as people start unmuting themselves and I can start calling on them if that's helpful.
Please do. That would be wonderful. Yes.
I see Ed and Angie. Ed was unmuted first. Ed, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Casey, what do you think about the people that think, well, they should have made different choices, not had kids, out of wedlock or whatever, just went to college before they had kids or whatever. What do you say to that?
Well, so oftentimes when we think about the reasons for poverty, and all the big heads, all the big cheeses around the world are like, what's the reason for poverty? Oftentimes middle class and upper class people blame the individual, when so rarely are we thinking about the components that actually, form poverty and what's going on. Systematic issues in politics, systemic racism, ageism, issues with gender. When you think about those communities, and so many of you said, what are the things that you think about that community? Well, lack of education, probably lack of contraceptive or sex education, lack of, medical services and healthcare services. So when you think about all of the conditions that an individual who is raised in poverty has to stand up against, we're not all starting off at the same start line. And people in poverty are starting in the negative. When someone in middle class is like, okay, we all start here, we're all at middle class, we all have, same access to education, we all have the same access to, a home environment that isn't filled with lead paint. We have access to well-rounded meals because we can afford groceries and, we have the access to a grocery store. Even just think about that, Ed, when you think about an impoverished community, how many grocery stores are there? You guys told me, you said dollar stores. Does a dollar store have a robust selection of produce? No. What we have in impoverished communities are convenience stores and fast food places. So again, when you kind of start to unpack all of the hardships that people in poverty have, from their nutrition. People in poverty are more susceptible to have asthma. The children that we service in the Head Start program, most of them, the only chronic condition that they have is asthma. And second, they have diabetes because of the environmental factors that are going on in their lives. So when someone says, well, you just shouldn't have made those choices, Well, sir, then you don't understand generational poverty because I really didn't have a whole lot of choice where I started.
Yeah, I agree with you because when I was going to college, my college sweetheart, being my first wife, I grew up pretty much middle class, but she grew up upper middle class, like in Shaker Heights. And I saw the difference in her family support with college and her first few cars and everything else. That I saw a really big difference. Her parents bought everything pretty much, and she didn't have to work in college. It was just totally different. So I seen how even middle class, where how I grew up, versus someone who's truly upper middle class is totally different. The starting point, as you mentioned, totally different.
It's totally different. And then
People take credit for their success like they did it all themselves.
right. And you and I could sit here, we could jam all day about it because the pieces, one of the big things that you talked about, and this will kind of be my last thought on your question, is that oftentimes people in poverty feel that they have no control over their fate, that their destiny is not theirs. Because my mom's always been poor, my grandma was poor, I've always been poor. And there's no way for me to get out of this. I'm not going to be able to go to college. Who's going to accept me? I can't afford college. And there's so many pieces of that we feel like there is no control. And the only thing that I can control are my relationships and the small amount of money that I have. And so that is a big piece of that individual behavior. I don't have control over it. And no one taught me any different.
Okay, we've got Angie next.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention two things. First was the fact that it's not just about the second job. It's about these single moms that have one, two, three kids, whatever they have. They want to spend time with their families. They have no control over that either. So having that constant contact with their kids is very important to them. And yeah, it's not always about the money. I mean, of course they're stressed and of course it's all that, but think about our own lives. How many of us were able to either be home with our children or had one of our significant others home with our children? It's a huge factor as well that stresses them out.
In childcare and, the aspect of, especially when you come from a middle class or an upper class family, you have grandparents, you have people who are available to watch your children. And when you come from generational poverty, everybody is working, everyone is hustling. Like that's what, your community is doing. So there aren't a whole lot of people who are available to watch your children. And if there are people who are available to watch your children, it's usually a friend who lives down the road who's like, all right, I'll watch your kids on Mondays and Tuesdays, but you got to watch my kids on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And that's the value of relationships for people in poverty. And that's a whole nother gambit for, a lot of the trainings that I do and really dissecting how important relationships are to individuals who live in poverty, because that's their wealth. Who do I know who can help me out? Because I don't have $100 to go and throw at, a new spark plug for my car. I need somebody who's going to come and help me pay for, those services.
Cassie, you've sparked a lot of interest here because we still have two more people yet.
Fantastic.
We've got Taylor, who sent me a message. She wanted to go next. And then Lori, I do see you, and we'll get you next after Taylor.
All right, Taylor, what you got?
Hi, Cassie. I just wanted to mention as well that work gets talked about a lot, but I feel like a topic that sometimes gets overlooked is transportation to work. So I'm on a couple court appointed lists and I get so many clients that have these huge traffic histories. They have like 17 suspensions on their license. And so it's kind of like we don't all start from the same level, like you were saying. So they'll owe the BMV thousands of dollars. They're not going to get that all paid up anytime soon. But if you're in a city, a rural city, the public transportation isn't an option. You're going to keep driving your car to work. And you just, once you get pulled over, you keep getting suspension after suspension. And even if you get a judge who gives you a break and gives you low court costs, low fines, and no additional suspension, it doesn't matter because that's still money that you have to pay. And if you don't pay your court costs, then the BMV gets a block on your license, so you can't renew. So even if you are valid, but you've got a court case out there, you still might not be able to renew. The BMV has an amnesty program, which is great, but it was only open for eligibility for like a year or two, and now it's closed. If you miss one payment, you get kicked out of the program, and it's just crazy. Also, making sure your car it has all the lights and, there's
Mhm.
no rust is not going to be a priority. So these people keep getting pulled over for taillights or excessive rust or like these insane minor traffic violations. Then their license gets run, it's suspended, and then it's just I whenever I'm advocating for my clients, I say, Your Honor, please, they are trying to dig out of this BMV hole, and anything else you put on them is just going to make it worse. Like, I understand court has a job to do, but just think about that. And the judges around here are extremely fair, but that always isn't the case. And I don't know how you dig yourself out without transporting yourself via a car to a job. It's just
Right. And especially in Medina, we are very rural. And if you don't have a car, then you are isolated. And you have to depend on, your friends and your relationships to get you where you go, or you break the law and you drive your car to work so that you can make that $10 an hour so that you can begin to pay off some of your fines. Or you end up getting thrown in jail because you have a bench warrant, you have a bunch of fines that you haven't paid. And there's a huge piece of that, Taylor. And really, to condense what you're saying, is that we have a lot of problems for systematic classism and racism. And so many times, those fines are just so astronomical. And, that they're targeted oftentimes to those individuals who can't pay for that headlight, can't pay for that tail light. And it just piles and it piles and it piles and it piles.
absolutely.
Lori, what you got?
Yeah, so I did some consulting work with a large food bank in California back in June. So this was in the peak of COVID. And they talked to me a lot about a term called new poverty.
Mhm.
And it was about people who had these phenomenal 6-figure careers, saved no money, have these McMansions in their Mercedes, lost their job, in 90 days lost everything.
Yeah.
Gone. And they're starting to live on the streets. And these are people with families, without families. I wanted to ask you, is that something you're seeing at all in our area? How is that new poverty been seen in Medina County, if seen at all?
Yeah. So what I can tell you, Lori, in my small bubble of community action, COVID has hit a lot of individuals pretty hard, especially in what you call new poverty, that, most of us don't have savings to last us a year. I mean, a lot of places have been shut down for almost a year, and people don't have the resources or chose individually to not, save or whatever that might have been. And then what the unfortunate thing is about new poverty are two things that I see. And the first is pride, that a lot of people who are newly poor, it's hard to ask for help. And it's hard because you don't know what help is out there. And, you're struggling and children are starving because people don't know what's available to them in the community. The second thing is that because of the community and the relationships that people have who are in poverty, sometimes they're better suited to deal with crisis and, the tyranny of the moment that take over because they are used to it. Hey, I've done this. I've ran this rodeo. And people who are newly poor, they have no idea. And that's really scary. And what we have to do at Community Action is help those individuals know, there is no shame in getting services. If you qualify for it, get it. And what I always tell people is that there's a pot of gold at the state level. And all that gold is there for people who fit under these poverty, guidelines. And if you don't come and get it, then they take it back. They're like, hey, I guess you didn't need that much gold. So sending people to get those services, it's there for you. But it is hard and it's a prideful thing. But I have seen a lot of people using more services, especially our rental assistance services at Community Action. We've been paying people's mortgages and their rent from far back as March of 2020 for individuals who fall under those criteria. We paid someone's mortgage. They had owed 16 grand on their mortgage because they had not worked since March of 2020. And we were able to pay $16,000 for that person's mortgage so that they were not going to be forced into foreclosure.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm getting so close to my time, Colleen. I'm very.
Oh, I know. And you're just a gold mine. I think you've done really, really well covering a lot of different things today, Cassie. And I just want to ask you one more question.
Sure.
If someone in the class wanted to get involved and help, you know, are there opportunities at Community Action? Are there other opportunities that you think they should consider? You know, the reason why we're talking about this topic this morning is we know that people in this program are probably going to go out and help some of these nonprofits that are helping people in poverty. And you've got to have a good understanding about what poverty is. And then the last thing, if you would too, is if they wanted to delve deeper into learning more about poverty, I know you teach a thing called Bridges Out of Poverty. So if you could just kind of cover those last two things, how to get involved and how to dig deeper, I think that.
Sure.
Thanks.
Perfect. So how to get involved is truly, you know, finding an agency that you agree with their mission, contacting them and asking them, you know, what kind of ways can I support you? Every agency has a different mission. Every agency has a different, you know, scope of practice. Places like churches, like pregnancy care centers, Oasis of Hope, the Oaks, the Lodi Food Pantry. Those are places that are always looking for volunteers to especially help with their food bank services, as well as like unrestricted funds that they might have for people who come in with poverty. And the thing about unrestricted funds is usually programs don't have a whole lot of that. And what that means is like, if someone comes to me today and says, hey, Cassie, I'm living in a homeless shelter and all I have to my name is my vehicle and I can't pay my car loan anymore. You know, can I have help with, you know, my 1 month of, you know, car payment? Well, I can't do that because I don't have any programs that do that, but I may have unrestricted funds that could support that person through that piece. So those are two things I would do. Find an agency that you aligns with your thoughts and your mission, ask them if they need volunteers, and, you know, provide donations for that unrestricted fund component. So what now? Like, what do I do? There are a lot of different trainings that I offer, and not to say that I'm like the all like, you know, Taj Mahal of information. I am not. But there are some things that at least I can offer. So one, like Colleen said, is the Bridges Out of Poverty program. We have one that's coming up on May 14th, which is a Friday. It's going to be in person because as much as I've loved spending time virtually with you guys, I love to see in flesh. I like to see everybody's legs. You know, so it'll be at Medina Presbyterian on May 14th. So if you're interested, you can connect with me via email. And we dive into like, what is poverty? What does the community look like? What are some solutions? You know, what are things that we can do to, you know, to help even as social service people and as people in our community to take care of our neighbors. The other piece that I do is called workplace stability. And we didn't get to talk about that, which I was really hoping that we could. But like I said, this is 45 minutes from 6 hours. So workplace stability is where I talk about, you know, hiring impoverished people into the workforce and how hard that sometimes can be. And so we talk about, you know, how you can stabilize your workforce when you're working with people who are impoverished. And so that is something that we do, you know, with employers, and we come in and we just talk about what that means. The other piece that we do is we go out, we talk to clients and talk to people who are impoverished about financial literacy, as well as a program called Getting Ahead. So Getting Ahead, you know, is really just helping them discover their path out of poverty. How'd you get here? Why did this happen? What are the community conditions that you haven't had a choice in? What are some individual pieces that you have had a choice in? And, you know, how can we understand your life cycle and help you get out of poverty? And, you know, at least get them back out into the workforce. And that's something that we've provided for many years at the Battered Women's Shelter here in Worcester. So some of those are some of the things. Someone asked about my contact info. I'll slap that into the chat. But if you guys are interested in more, please don't hesitate to ask. Or if you have a question, you're like, hey, you didn't get to my question, please email it to me. Oh, thanks, Colleen. So that is what I've got for you guys. If you have any last questions, I know that you guys have a lot to do today. So thank you guys all very much for your time, for your energy, and, you know, have a really great time visiting all the wonderful programs that are out there supporting your neighbors and your community.
Cassie, you just did a fantastic job. Thank you so much. Fantastic session. Her email is in there, so I'm going to tell everybody, just email her if you have a question. She'll connect you. If you need information about the Bridges Out of Poverty, let her know. Thanks for joining us today, Cassie. I wish we could have spent a longer time with you, but we are trying to cover a lot of topics today. So, and I hope everybody's reading through the chat because there's been a lot of great comments, a lot of accolations there for you too, Cassie. So we're going to move to our next speaker now, and that's Debbie Kiley. She's from the class of 2007, and she's the director for Job and Family Services. Thank you so much for joining us today, Debbie. We're looking forward to talking with you.
Great, thanks. Can you hear me okay, Colleen?
Sure can.
Okay, wonderful. Wow, Cassie is a tough act to follow. I'm almost nervous now. I wasn't nervous till Cassie started talking. And
You're good. And you've got some flexibility. I know Laura's on the call and she's after you, so we're just going to shift. You still get your full half an hour, and Laura, you still get your full time too. So because we've got a little bit of extra buffer time, so just want to make sure everybody knows that.
yeah, no problem. Well, as Colleen mentioned, my name is Debbie Kiley. I'm the director for Job and Family Services here in Medina County. I've just coming up on my 1-year anniversary of being in the director position. So I'm still, thank you, learning lots about the various aspects of Job and Family Services, period. But I've been with Job and Family Services for 28 years. But all of that time and where I cut my teeth was in the public assistance arena. So I know a lot about the public assistance piece, but I'll talk about the other aspects of the agency as well. So Job and Family Services, we're located on Northland Drive. And the first plug I'll say is that we are not the unemployment office. The unemployment office is run at the state level. At the county level, we run the public assistance programs and then the other things that I'll talk about. So we don't manage the unemployment office area. But what Job and Family Services does for Medina County is that while we provide some services and supports, a lot of what we do is we refer. We're almost like the traffic cop. Someone will come into our agency or call us, and that can be an individual or it can be a family, and they are either in crisis or they're in need. And we will either provide some services or some benefits, but a lot of what we do is we make those referrals, like community action, like to the housing authority, like to mental health and drug and alcohol treatment centers. So we do a lot of traffic cop. We do a lot of, you need to go here. This is the number you can call. But that said, Job and Family Services for Medina County, we're what we're called a quadruple combined agency. So we have public assistance programs. We also have child protective. We are also the Office of Child Support. And then the fourth thing that we are is the Ohio Means Jobs. That section is combined with Summit County. So it's Medina and Summit are what they call a council of government, a COG. And we run a program through the Ohio Means Jobs office, which is actually in the old prosecutor's office behind the courthouse. That entity there, what we do is individuals that are coming to us for services or for help, and we identify that they might have some skill or some educational attainment issues, we're referring them to the Ohio Means Job Center, and that entity or that organization helps individuals attain skills. They might have grants for educational achievements, CDLs, things like that. So we do a lot of trafficking people in that direction. So for the public assistance piece, you have already talked a lot about the programs that my agency offers. The first and probably the most popular is food assistance. It's now called SNAP, and that's SNAP, Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. And that's a food assistance program. It can be for families and it can be also for individuals. And way back in the day, it used to be little coupons that it looked like Monopoly money. And that's what people would take to the grocery store. And it could be probably a little humiliating because it was obvious how you were paying for your food. You were giving someone your Monopoly money and everyone around you knew that you were on food stamps. What the state has moved to now is what Cassie had mentioned. It's called EBT, Electronic Benefits Transfer. It looks exactly like a debit card or a credit card that probably all of us have at least one. So it's much more discreet and a little more private. So that's the SNAP program. It's based on poverty. All the programs and services that we offer outside of the protective piece is based on poverty, much like what Cassie talked about. And there is no one set level of poverty. If for food assistance program, you're at what they call 130% of poverty. And that's a household size of 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 10, 20, however many people are in your home. So that's the SNAP program. It's based on that 130% of poverty. There's also a program called Ohio Works First, OWF. That's a cash program, and that one is only for pregnant women and families with children under the age of 18. So that program is a very small cash benefit that's given to families so long as they qualify. That income standard is incredibly low. It's probably about 40% of poverty. So you have to have very little, if zero income in order to qualify for that program. And again, like I said, it's reserved for pregnant women and families with children. And I want to be sure too that I try and make most of my statements gender neutral, because I think there is the thought that a lot of it is a single mom. It's a single mom, and there are plenty of single moms, but trust me, there are plenty of single dads out there with children in their home trying to make ends meet too. So it's about families that are in crisis. So that cash assistance program exists. And then the next one that you probably have well heard of is Medicaid. And Medicaid can be for families with children. Thanks to Obamacare and the expansion and Governor Kasich expanding Medicaid, it is now covering single individuals with no children, and also for our disabled and our aged population. Aged is 65 and older. That's considered the aged population for Medicaid. And the income standards for Medicaid are crazy. For single individuals, it's 133%. For a child without insurance, it's 150%. For a child with insurance, it's 200%. It's just, there are so many levels that caseworkers, when they get an application, they're not just checking a box. Yeah, you qualify, or no, you don't. They're going, okay, well, you don't qualify for this program. What about this one? No? All right. What about this one? And on and on and on and on and on. So the Medicaid program is actually pretty convoluted and complex. We also offer through the public assistance piece something called PRC. It's prevention, retention, and contingency. And the idea is that we're trying to prevent the crisis from happening, like what Cassie talked about, rent and evictions. We're trying to prevent that from happening, because if that happens, if someone is evicted, or they can't get their car fixed, or they can't pay their utility bills, that sometimes is the first domino that gets flipped that changes their life for a very long time. And when Cassie talked about digging out of that hole, sometimes that's the first shovel in the ground. I can't pay my rent. Now I got evicted. Now I lost my job. Now now. And all of a sudden things just start snowballing. So that prevention, retention, and contingency, it is only for children and families. A lot of the income that we receive, or a lot of the revenue that Job and Family Services receives, is based on something called TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. That's the federal funding that hosts all sorts of programs for families and children in need. And then as it trickles down to states, Michigan calls it something else, Maine calls it something else, Ohio chose to call it Ohio Works First. But so much of that funding that comes our way is based on children and families. There's not a lot of money that comes our way that's for the aged population or for single individuals. So, and I can appreciate that too, because what we're trying to do is help those families so that a child that's in crisis, as that child grows, is hopefully growing out of crisis and potentially doesn't need services anymore. So that's kind of like the 50,000-foot view of the public assistance piece that my division takes care of, or the agency takes care of. There's also child support. That one is pretty self-explanatory almost. There's no income guidelines, there's no standards, anything like that. We are creating and establishing orders of support for children that are living with one parent. That can be mom or it can be dad. There's plenty of those types of different families that exist. So the child support program, like I said, is pretty. There's not a lot of sexy talk about child support. So the last thing that we do that is the heaviest thing is child protective, and that sounds exactly like what it is. It's for the protection of children that are being abused, neglected, or abandoned. And abandoned can be, for instance, a mom she ODs, she overdoses, and she goes to the hospital, and she had her child in the car. That child is now dependent because mom is intoxicated, or she's overdosed, or anything like that. So that's kind of the definition of dependency, is where a child is left on its own. So the abuse and the neglect, we have a hotline that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I think last year we had about 1,500 calls into the abuse neglect hotline. And what we do is we take those calls and we have a screener that receives those calls, understands what the referent is talking about, what happened to the child, when did it happen, who did it happen to. And then we have something called a red team, where after that call comes in, a group gets together and they talk about the circumstances that that child is in. If it's severe enough that we believe we need to go out and see the child and get eyes on the child, we send out a caseworker to the family. A lot of times it's unannounced. A lot of times we're going with the police department. If it's a dangerous situation, we're calling the police to escort us out to the home. If we believe that that child is in crisis, we will file with the courts and we will remove the child from the home to keep the child safe. One thing, and I see John is on here, we have started great efforts towards foster parent recruitment. I think it is a misnomer that foster families are easy to find, and unfortunately, that's not always the case, because it takes a lot to foster a child. It takes a lot to bring a stranger into your home and provide care for that child. But we are in great need of foster families. I actually presented at the commissioners yesterday, and Commissioner Hudson asked me a great question, and he said, "How many more foster families do you need, Debbie?" And I said, "I don't know that I can put a number on that, but it's not so much how many I need, it's who I need." We currently have about 43 foster families that are active. And of those 43, I think we have probably 49 in foster care, 49 children in foster care. We currently have 87 children total in our care and control at Job and Family. But when Commissioner Hudson asked me that, I said, a lot of times the children that we are taking in have some significant health, or either physical health or mental health issues. And a lot of times those children are at a very tender age of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I mean, they're coming on their teenage years and they're carrying a lot of baggage with them. And there's something called a therapeutic foster home that we desperately need. And that's where these foster families learn more about the addiction. They learn more about sexual abuse. They can provide a higher level of care for these children when they're in our care, when they're in foster homes. So we're trying to promote that, and John was really instrumental in getting together a group to create a video that will hopefully be soon releasing, to continue to encourage people to step up to be foster parents for children in Medina County.
That's really exciting. I know there's a couple people in the class, Jason and others, that are also working on this initiative. Can we back up for just one moment? We did have a question from Ed and then a follow-up with Taylor. He said, "You guys handle child support. There's no separate agency or division of the prosecutor's office." And then Taylor said, "Ed, prosecutor's office prosecutes failure to pay child support payments made to child support enforcement agency that maybe works with Medina Job and Family Services. Would love to hear more of how it works, Debbie."
Okay, so that's absolutely correct. What was it? Tanya replied to that?
Taylor replied to that.
Yeah, Taylor is absolutely right. So what we have through the child support division in the agency is a contract with the prosecutor's office. We also have a contract with domestic relations court, and we have a contract with the clerk of courts, and then the sheriff's department. So when someone fails to pay, and it doesn't become a criminal act until I believe it's 26 missed payments within a certain period of time. So the first month someone doesn't pay, there isn't, I mean, we're still pursuing, but there isn't, it hasn't become a criminal act yet. But what we do is that once it reaches a point where we need to get the prosecutors involved, we reach out to the prosecutor's office and provide the information about those individuals who have failed to pay. And then the prosecutor's office will seek criminal charges against that man or woman for failing to pay. That doesn't mean that they start paying. Sometimes those individuals that have failed to pay don't show up at court. They flee, and that's where the sheriff's departments come in. So once we know that we have sought to the prosecutor's office and then gone to the court level, and if that person continues to fail to pay, or if they skip or we can't find them, we've extradited. I think we extradited someone 2 years ago from Alaska. the sheriff's department got involved and found this individual in Alaska. I don't know the details about how, but we extradited that person from Alaska back to the state of Ohio to seek payment and to take them to court and say, you can't run away from your obligation to provide for the child that you created.
Right. So the Child Support Agency is part of Job and Family Services in Medina County, but that may not be true in every county. So every county gets to choose how they want to collaborate and coordinate, and how the agencies are going to be, where they're going to be housed, I guess, in some ways.
Exactly. So Medina County Job and Family Services, we used to actually be just the public assistance division. Another division was set up for Child Protective. They had their own director, they had their own building, and Child Support, same thing. They were located offsite, had their own director and their own building. And when Meade Wilkins, who is now was the third director from me, he had the idea, it's just like, why are we not all under one roof? Because a lot of the families that we care for and provide services for are interconnected. They're what I would call multi-system with us. It's a single parent, so that we're seeking support services. It's a single parent because they need assistance with Medicaid, food, and cash programs. And then maybe there's some abuse or neglect that has happened in that home, and now Child Protective is involved. So Medina County is now triple combined with the Office for Ohio Means Jobs as our quadruple component. But Summit County is separate. They have their own child support division, they have their own child protective division, and they have their own public assistance division. Same with Cuyahoga County. And I often joke the great state of Cuyahoga because it's big. Their caseloads are huge. I couldn't imagine having that organization combined like we are in Medina.
Well, that makes sense. Thank you.
Sure. I think that's a good, like I said, 50,000 foot view. Colleen, you wanted me to go over like a family scenario. How do you want to?
Yeah, so I did put it in a Word doc that I thought I could share with everybody. This was the one that you had sent me, Debbie. And so we have this scenario of a single parent with 2 children. If everybody could see that on their screens, I'm not going to read completely through it, but just wanted to see, maybe you could walk us through this and how you would help this family at Job and Family Services.
Sure. So like the scenario suggests, it's a single parent and they're already struggling with some substance abuse. And that's why I talked about, you can see here that, and this was really easy for me to put together, unfortunately, because this happens a lot in Medina County. And I like what Cassie had mentioned, that there's no poverty, there's no homelessness in Medina County. Oh yes, there is. Oh yes, there is. And while we're rural, we're also suburban. I mean, Medina is big, Brunswick is big, Wadsworth is big. So these issues, they're prevalent. So this single parent, if she's struggling with alcohol use, she gets arrested for domestic violence. So again, this is kind of like that domino that gets flicked. She's struggling with some substance abuse issues, and then she gets into a fight because they were both drunk. Then she goes to jail and she loses her job. So you can just see by this scenario, her life or his life is about to snowball out of control. So what we would do with this family is that Child Protective would become involved. And when Child Protective becomes involved in this family, what we're doing is we're trying to keep the family together. I think there's the idea that Child Protective always wants to take the kids, and we always want to remove the child and never give them back. That is totally the opposite. We want that child to live with its parent. As I mentioned at the commissioners meeting yesterday, is that entering foster care for a child is hugely traumatic. They're going into a home that they don't know the family, they don't know the people. So I mean, you can even appreciate, you go to a party and it's maybe a household of people that you don't know. You're a little uncomfortable, but imagine if you're a kid and you're forced to go to this party and go to this foster family. So what we're doing with this family from a Child Protective perspective is that we're going to take the child in, place them in foster care. Hopefully the child doesn't have extensive needs that it requires rehabilitation in a facility, a residential facility, but let's just keep it clean-ish and say that we're going to take the child and we're going to put the child in foster care. And then what we're going to do with is we're going to help her and give her intensive services for drug, alcohol, and then even some behavior help, because she's drinking, and then she or he is getting mad, and they're getting into arguments, things like that. So we're going to wrap services around mom, and that can be through all sorts of different entities that exist in the county. There's the ADAM board, the Alcohol, Drug, and Mental Health Board. They have a ton of services that they help fund. And what we're going to do is we're going to push mom in those directions, and we're going to give her markers, mom or dad. We're going to give her markers and say, you need to make sure that you attend counseling however many times a week. You're going to need to make sure that you do this. You're going to need to make sure you do that. And then from a public assistance perspective, we're going to provide her or him some cash assistance programs, as well as Medicaid, because now we're telling him or her, you need to go get those services that you don't have insurance for. Okay, so here's some Medicaid programs that might help pay for those services. And then also what we'll do is that Ohio Means Jobs that I told you about, that's in the old prosecutor's office. We're going to set her or him up there too. Let's talk about some skill attainment. If you have a chance after this class or any other time, go to omj.gov. omj.ohio.gov. They have a fabulous website that's out there, and it's state run, but it sounds terrible, but it's almost like a dating service for employees and employers. What you're doing is you're plugging all of your information in that says, I know how to do this, I know how to do that, I have a degree in this, I have a certification in that, and it helps you match you with an employer that exists out there. As well, it also helps identify what skill attainment you might need. And then we're also going to work towards grant funding and things like that through the Ohio Means Job Center about what grants might be available to help provide some of those skill attainment services. And then her losing her job, and her or him losing their job, it's all we're trying to do from a Job and Family Services perspective is surround that family and provide them services about what do they need help with, and where can we point them in the right direction.
That's great. We've got some questions already in the queue here from Angie. She said, do you guys do anything with Big Brothers and Big Sisters or any other entities like this?
Big Brothers and Big Sisters, if we don't have any contracts with them, if that's what you're talking about, but what we would do is if we felt like, especially from a child protective perspective, if we felt like the family might benefit from being involved with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, we would certainly make those types of referrals. A lot of times the things that we're helping families with are intensive services, and we might, again, refer to a Big Brothers, Big Sisters, but we don't have any formal contracts with them, no.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone? I don't see anybody unmuted. I don't see. Okay, I guess I do have one final question. I mean, I know we've got this wonderful video coming out about foster care and such, but if someone was interested in being a foster care parent or wanted to share this information with their circle about how to become a foster care parent, or maybe there's another way to get involved at Job and Family Services, by volunteering or doing other things, can you share any opportunities like that? How can we get involved, and how can we help, Debbie?
Yeah, so from a foster parent perspective, if you're interested in learning more about the foster parent process and licensing, Colleen, you can share my email address, and you can certainly reach out to me, and I can point you in the right direction, or I can answer any questions. As far as volunteering is concerned, there's not a lot of volunteer opportunities directly with Job and Family Services, because what we do is highly confidential, not only from a child protective perspective, but also from a public assistance perspective. Those individuals have the rights to their privacy. And to a certain extent, it's against the law for me to share a lot of that type of information. So there are often opportunities with different foster parent groups through like what Cassie had mentioned, through local churches and things like that. But those opportunities, again, they're pretty unique, only because I've got to make sure that you follow some pretty heavy confidentiality requirements before you can volunteer.
Absolutely. John, I see you're unmuted.
Well, I just want to give a plug for Big Brothers, Big Sisters. So, obviously being a foster parent is a whole different set of challenges. But if someone is looking to sort of work with younger kids that are in need, that program is outstanding, and they are always looking for bigs. especially men. That seems to be, there's a tendency to have a lot of young boys that don't have men mentors, and then the reverse. There's a lot of women are willing to do it, but they don't necessarily have the young ladies to match up. So I would throw that plug out there for anyone interested in helping out.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Gary Blake from Metropolitan Housing, he wants to know what type of volume of Medicaid and or SNAP a year occurs in dollars.
In dollars, Medicaid is millions. But if you want to know the numbers of individuals that are, there you go. Thanks, Gary. The number of families. So from a Medicaid perspective, right now we're trending about 23,000 individuals in Medina County are on Medicaid. That includes individuals, and includes families. That's everyone. There's about 9,000 individuals that are receiving food stamp benefits. And the amount of food stamp benefits that just are issued in Medina County alone, I think it's right now it's about $2.9 million per month that we issue to families, those 9,000 families. And that's, yeah, it's a lot. And right now the federal government, because of the coronavirus and the public health emergency, the federal government has allowed the food assistance program to be issued the maximum amount allotment to individuals, whether they qualify for $1 or $105. That family gets the maximum amount now during this public health emergency. So that food assistance number is, the dollar is a bit inflated because of the public health emergency, but I still think it's relevant to talk about because there's still 9,000 families or 9,000 people in Medina County that are receiving food assistance benefits.
That's great. One other thing, and I don't know if Laura's going to touch on this, so Laura, I apologize if I'm touching on something that you're going to touch on. But as far as also another service, and maybe you said this and I just missed it with, are you guys still doing adult protective services at JFS?
Yes, we still have adult protective services at Job and Family. And thanks for that. The adult protective, and actually Laura and I are working on transitioning that over to the Office for Older Adults, because Laura and I both believe that that's a program that is a better fit for her office, because she is already trying to surround those seniors with different services. And in doing that, and Laura, I hope I'm not stealing her thunder, but she's already providing those services. So at the time she's providing services, that her group might also be identifying some protective factors that might exist for that elderly population. And for adult protective, that age is actually 60 and older.
So if someone saw something, let's say for a child or an adult, and is it better just to go ahead and report it and let your team decide, or should they weigh, well, it really wasn't that bad, or that's probably something we can all do, is if we see something, say something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would rather have someone over-report than under-report. And if you do have any instances of child abuse or neglect, and you're like, I'm not sure, if you call our child abuse hotline, it's 330-661-0800, and it's on our website, mcjfs.us. So we have a Facebook page. So it's very important that you don't make that decision. Let us make that decision. And if we get you on the phone and we're like, yeah, that really, that might not be rise to the occasion of abuse or neglect, I'd rather know and make the decision with that amount of knowledge, and then not hear it and then end up that a child gets hurt or an adult gets hurt.
Is it the same hotline for children as well as adults?
It is. Yep.
And that's not going to change even with the transfer. It'll be the same abuse hotline.
Okay, great. I see Laura also put on here, Debbie, let's talk about our levy. So how about each of you? This is a really great transition. So I'm bringing in Laura. She's a class of 2001 grad, and she's the director for Medina County Office for Older Adults, which is a population we really wanted to have a chance just to talk a little bit about today. Sometimes people don't think of them on Human Services or Poverty Day, but definitely there's a need there. So, but Debbie, you can still pipe in about the levy too. You don't have to necessarily turn off your camera, but we can have the two of you popping up here. I'm going to remove you off the spotlight and we'll get Laura in there, but you guys can both definitely chime in. Laura, it's great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Colleen, for inviting me. Yes, I was in the class of 2001. That means I'm synergistic. And I'm also almost a client for my services. So dealing with older adults. But I thank you guys so much for asking me here today. So let me do a little history about funding. We'll start with funding because Debbie is transitioning off. So in 2015, there was a combined levy put on the ballot, and it was for the ADAM board, that is Addiction and Mental Health Board, Children's Services, Adult Protective Services, just those divisions of JFS, and then our office, the Office for Older Adults. At that time, it did not pass, but try again. We put it back on in 2019, and it did pass. So we are very excited to have that levy. There previously was no dedicated funding for seniors at all, except for the federal funding we get, which I'll talk about. That's our other funding stream, but no local funds were dedicated for senior services. So this has changed that. And we were, let me count, the 82nd county to have dedicated money for senior services. So it was something overwhelmingly popular within the state. We just had to find the right formula. So we don't have a senior levy. Other counties have that, but we have senior services as part of this human services levy. And for Debbie, that's also meant funding for the Children's Services Division in JFS. And I'm not sure how you guys were funded. I do know that you needed to build out some workers and services. Am I correct there, Debbie?
Yeah, absolutely. So that the funding that we would receive from for the Child Protective Division was, some of it was general revenue funds from the county. Part of that is what they call a mandated share, so that the county is mandated to provide X amount of dollars up to a certain amount. But then the other funds would come from either state or federal dollars.
So we were kind of, I mean, in that way, in the same boat, because we don't have state dollars at the Office for Older Adults, but our other primary source of funding it goes way back, way back. In the late 60s, President Johnson passed the Older Americans Act. And that started a federal funding stream for senior services, for specific senior services. And we continue to get funding to the tune of about, I think, $325,000 a year in Medina County to provide services. So what are the federal services we provide? We provide nutrition. That is by far the largest service. I think it's one of the main things the Office for Older Adults is known for. And that nutrition services takes the form of home delivered meals as well as congregate meals. So home delivered is just what it sounds like. We deliver food for, I'm going to go pre-COVID here, and then I'll talk about what's happened since the pandemic. We deliver food 4 days a week to people. It doesn't matter where you live, as long as it's in Medina County. So I always say Homerville to Hinckley and everywhere in between, we're delivering food for seniors who qualify for the program. And then we have congregate meals, which is just what it sounds like. Seniors come together in a space, congregate to have a meal together. So we have that in Brunswick and Medina. And then we have a really great innovative program called the Restaurant Voucher Program that takes place at the Suprema Senior Center Cafe. And that has been wildly popular and successful. So we've had that for about, let's see, it started in 2013, so it'll be our 8th year. So that's one program. Another federal program is transportation. I heard somebody bring up transportation earlier in the poverty segment. We get federal funds to transport people to the doctor, to the senior center, to the grocery store, to the bank, a lot of those vital services. We can't pay for somebody to go get their hair done, but we can pay for somebody to get some of their basic needs met. So that we contract with Medina County Transit to do that. So we are supplying transportation subsidies. The other thing that, another thing that we do is benefit services. This has been really helpful, I think, to the JFS process, that seniors can come into our agency and fill out forms for programs, whether that be SNAP, food, SNAP, or medical or anything a senior might need. We can help them through that process, which then helps the JFS eligibility workers. So that is another thing that we do. What we're probably, when you see our building, we do have a senior center. It's right at 246 Northland, the corner of Huntington and North Huntington and Northland Drive. And we operate many senior services. We have exercise programs, educational programs. Yes, we even have bingo. I think everybody thinks of bingo when they think of a senior center, but we do just so much more than that. We have pool tables, and our senior center, again, pre-pandemic was open 5 days a week, and seniors could come, gather, socialize, have their coffee, play their games, do their exercise, whatever needs they might have could be handled within the senior center. We also have a contract in Brunswick. We run senior services out of the Brunswick Recreation Center. And along with the restaurant voucher program in Wadsworth, we do some benefit services and other things. So we're in the 3 municipalities in Medina County, although we are available to meet in other areas or meet people in their homes. So that's kind of a quick overview of our services. I do want to talk about, though, our response to the pandemic, because it did dramatically change the past 13 months or so what we've been doing. So currently we are not offering that congregate meal program. It has flipped, and we are able to offer, because the federal guidelines relaxed a little bit, we're able to offer those services in the home. So our home delivered meal program went from 38,000 meals in like 2018, 2019 to 67,000 in 2020. So we just 175% increase. So we kind of changed our whole operation. So let me tell you, if this was last April and you wanted to meet, I would have been like, no way, I don't have the time for that. But it's just amazing when you are forced to start new programs and look at things differently, how people respond, and how through, I think, strong leadership, not only by my leadership team, which includes other graduates of Leadership Medina County, we were able to say, this is how we're going to do things. We will adapt to the situation at hand. So yeah, last April and May were really hairy, and we were running. We were saying, how the meal's gonna flow through our agency, but we got it. We got it, and we continue to have a great system to get these meals out into the community. So I'm really proud of the work we've done over the past year. That is by far our largest increase, that the home delivered meals. We've also delivered shelf stable meals, which is something we hadn't previously done. We have people coming to pick up hot meals a couple times a month. They can come for a lunch that is provided by us. We just take donations. That has been really great. We started a volunteer shopping program. So if we had seniors in their home, we partnered with Buehler's Fresh Foods. We had volunteers sign up, and they could shop on behalf of a senior, and then Buehler's would call the senior to get payment. So the volunteer never handled money. They just go in, got the grocery list, shop for the senior, Buehler's took care of the payment, and those groceries were delivered. That's a little more hands-on than going on the internet, picking out your groceries, which many places have that now, including Buehler's, but Giant Eagle has that. I believe Walmart has that. It's a little more hands-on for people who do not want to go get their groceries, even to go out, which that happened the past year. We had to respond and made sure people have their basic needs met. So those are the type of programs that we did during the pandemic. We are slowly, we reopened on April 12th, and we are slowly getting our services back up to those pre-pandemic services I talked about. We have under the Ohio Department of Health orders, seniors have to sign up for activities. So we're only having a couple activities a day. And also, I want you guys to imagine this in the places you work. My staff has to be tested every 2 weeks for COVID. There's no choice. They have to be tested. If you don't test, if you didn't consent to test, which was an option, you couldn't work. That doesn't mean I would fire you. That means you couldn't work. So by state order, you'd have to be home till the order was lifted. So try and imagine that in your place of employment. I think my staff handled it fantastically. I'm very proud. I think it comes from explaining and explaining again. They knew this was coming months in advance. There's still a little pushback, understandably. They're sticking a swab up your nose, but it's still an invasive procedure, you know, but they have responded great, and we are able to open. Of a little bit of concern, we'll see how it rolls out. Our home delivered meal numbers, even though everything's reopened, are still really high. At our peak, we were about 250. We're still in the 240s all these months later. So we'll see how that rolls out over the next 6 months or so. But that's a little bit about what we do. I think Debbie and I covered adult protective. That will be a change in where these workers are housed, but JFS is absolutely still involved. And for any abuse concerns, you would call the 661-0800. Are there any questions?
I don't see any right now.
Let me mention one thing that is really weird because I forgot it. Our benefit program where we help people apply for benefits, whether that be federal, local, whatever, that is not a 60 and over program. That is an 18 and over program. So anybody can come in and ask for benefit services, and we are able to help them. I forgot to mention that when I talked about that.
The age thing is really surprising, right? Because you're like,
correct. I always think if somebody had an issue and they were 34 years old, why would you call the office for older adults? So that is really a PR thing that we need to work on and let people know you can call us for things of that nature.
So, so we've got the Medina County Home, and then we got the Office for Older Adults. What's the difference between your two entities? And, do you have anything to do with the Medina County Home? And, we haven't really learned much about it. So I want to make sure the class knows the difference between the two.
Okay. The Medina County Home is, I'll speak on behalf of Greg Brown. Greg Brown is the director out there. It is one of only, I think, 7 or 8 county homes in the state. It is not a licensed home, but people who are need a place to live can go and stay there. They don't have to be Medicaid eligible. They don't have to have a lot of income. It's a sliding fee for services based on what you present to the county home with. Right now, they have a census of about 39 people. And they also are gearing up and have reopened their adult daycare program, which is the only adult daycare program in the county, which is really good because a lot of times people need respite if they're caring for their loved one in their home who may have a dementia issue or some other physical issue. It's very taxing on caregivers. And sometimes they just need a little break, and it's also good activities for the person who may come to the county home. But that is a self-contained home for a number of residents. Usually, I think their max is 50 residents, and they provide all services 24/7. We offer services out into people's homes where they're at, and we offer that to anybody in Medina County. So our service numbers and the people we serve are much larger than the county home, but it's a different type of service.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much, Laura. One thing the class has noticed this year, and especially on the last class evaluation, is just the kind of collaboration they've been seeing all year long. I mean, just even the collaboration and the energy between you and Debbie today, and what you both are doing, working collaboratively, together in the community, but then also working on a collaborative levy to help fund these things in a responsible way, I think is just really shows again the collaboration that we have going on in Medina County and caring for some of our vulnerable populations who need attention, who need resources and someone to connect them. So I just want to thank you both, Debbie and Laura, for the great work you're doing, for your collaborative spirit, for your willingness to think outside of the box. We got a comment here from Danielle. Medina Hospital just received their emergency room geriatric accreditation, focusing on care that addresses geriatric issues. Would love to know of needs that we could address to support this population while in our care.
I think that just relaying information, just so people know, a lot of insurance companies have started once a geriatric patient is released, depending on why they were in the hospital, they'll provide meals, maybe like a couple weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. But we'll do temporary meal service if somebody's homebound. If they need, service for 6 weeks or for 12 weeks, recovering from a knee replacement or, something like that. And do people know about, financial service? I think just Medina Hospital historically we go and talk to their nurse case managers about once a year. We haven't been in 2 years, but typically about once a year, once every 18 months, just reminding them of the services we offer and trying to partner with them so that it can be a continuous flow of services from inpatient back into their homes in the community. But anything you need, Danielle, you can email me again if Colleen can put my email, or I'll put it right now in the chat. I'd be happy to partner if you have any ideas or if you want to brainstorm.
Sure, thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you want to add anything, Danielle?
No, I'll reach out to Laura. I might have some ideas. I also chair our End of Life Committee at Medina Hospital, and we have a lot of discussion about community education around advanced directives. And so if there's ever a need, we could certainly partner on something like that too.
I think that's fantastic. If we could put a presentation together for seniors, I think that would be great.
Okay,
Great.
I'll reach out to you. Thank you.
Love seeing these connections during the class days. Well, I'm not going to keep you two because even though it's not last year and the craziness is not quite as crazy, I'm sure both of you have a full plate today. Thank you for spending some time with us this morning. We're really grateful and hope you both have a fantastic day. We'll connect again in the future.
Great. Thanks, Colleen. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Good luck, everybody. Have a great day.
All right, so last but not least, I've got some things to share with you guys, just in some instructions for the day. And just want to go through, don't forget if you can to wear your badge today, if everyone knows where it's at. Yes, I see some scared looks here. It's all right. If you don't have it, you're not going to be kicked out today. Also, if everybody's going to Feeding Medina County today, and they said they could use some of these reusable grocery bags. They don't have to be brand new. So, don't take them if you think you're going to upset your wife or your husband or your significant other. But if you have a couple you could grab, like I said, they said used is fine, whatever. They just need some bags. So Katie would be very pleasantly surprised if you guys remember. Also, I can't be everywhere with everyone today. I wish I could, but the cloning did not work. It was a failure. And all joking aside, I really ask if you guys would help me with some photos again today. There were some really exceptional fun photos on the last class day, and I'd love to see some more fun photos on this class day of some of the things that you're doing when you're out on your tours. And then last but not least, I don't think I gave enough explanation of what we're doing at Serenite at the end of the day. And I just wanted to make sure you knew how important it is to go to Serenite at the end of the day. It's not just networking. It's not just the evaluation. They're actually going to do a presentation about what they're doing at Serenite when we go there. So I really don't want you to miss that. Please join us for that at the last stop. So is there any questions about how the day's rolling, where you're supposed to go? Did everyone see the chart on the agenda and you know which places and stops you're supposed to go throughout the day? Okay, good. Last but not least, I understand that this class has been working on a presentation for the closing retreat about your 30 acts of kindness. So I think I created a lot of confusion by asking everyone to send them to me so we can work on it on Friday. And then I know someone else is collecting them within your class. So I apologize if I created any confusion or anything, and just want to answer any questions that anyone has. And then also want to find out, do you guys need time at the closing retreat to finalize that presentation?
So I'll jump in. Yes, we are working on it. The true test of leadership, leadership, Colleen, is when you as a leader have given us, you taught us to fish. Yeah. And so, we're taking things on ourselves. So yeah, we're putting it together. It's coming along nicely. I do think based on what I'm seeing that we have some opportunity to spend some time together to flesh it out and just clean it up a little bit, but probably don't need 4 hours, probably need an hour.
Exactly. I agree.
So you need an hour at the closing retreat.
Yes.
As long as everybody does what they're asked to do before the closing retreat.
Yes, and just for clarification, we're designating someone to speak on behalf of the class to make that presentation at graduation. Is that correct, Colleen?
Yes, so you'll have an opportunity. We designated 15 minutes at graduation for your class to talk about the 30 acts of kindness. And I wanted to check too, is that going to be enough time with what you guys have already started planning?
Did she say 15 minutes? Did you say 15 minutes?
15 minutes.
Possibly.
Depends on who's talking.
Yeah, depends who's talking. I would say 30 minutes might be better.
But yeah, so yeah, 15 minutes. I mean, give or take a little, there's always a little extra buffer time. I try to build that in all the time.
So
I'm sure we can all put our heads together.
15 minutes, or are you asking us we need more time?
I'm asking you if you need more time.
I don't, yeah.
Yes, I think we need more time. Can we do 30 minutes?
30 minutes. Wow.
And we'll exceed expectations and come in under that.
You're gonna kill our audience, dude. Stop talking.
See, there are several people talking in somewhat of a code here, Colleen.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
I will give you 50 minutes. I will let Terry and Jess know today to expect that, so we'll make some adjustments to our program. And okay, so that's good. Any other questions or concerns? So basically the way you guys have been doing it is everybody's going to be responsible to bring their 30 acts of kindness on Friday then. So everybody brings it with them on Friday, right? Or brings whatever components they need.
Yes, everybody's going to bring their 30 acts of kindness, but something's already in place that we're just going to go over and tweak.
Okay.
How's that?
So I don't need to bring any of the 30 acts of kindness for you guys or anything like that. You guys will bring what you need for that.
Correct. And if you could just let everyone know to bring their 30 acts of kindness, just in case, that would be exceptional.
What if we've previously just sent our 30 to Colleen? Do we need to still bring it?
I do.
So long.
I do have a bunch. So, I mean, I can print anything for anybody that's already sent it to me and bring it.
Yeah, Sharice, in your situation, you're good to go. How's that for an answer?
I appreciate it. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Also, just want to remind everybody, let me know if you completed the challenge. I know so far Sharice and Laura Kettering have completed the challenge of meeting with everyone in their class. Has anyone else completed it that I don't know about?
Getting close.
Getting close, Brad says. Okay. Gary says he's close too. Kim is asking, what are the addresses for the places we're touring today? They're actually, all the addresses are on the agenda that I emailed to you guys. So they're listed up in the top section of the 10:15 to 11:15 a.m. Kim.
Okay,
So
I see it now.
there. Okay, great.
I have like my font like 2.
Oh goodness. Sorry about that. So,
all right.
Yeah, and then it's the same address, obviously, and then the chart just shows you what your journey will be today of all the places that you're going to. And then just want to remind everyone about graduation. You can bring one guest for free. I still have 3 people who have not registered for graduation. I do have to turn in those numbers to the Blair Center on Friday. So I know a couple of you are waiting on schedules for husbands or wives or whatever. So just so you guys know, let's see here. I don't have Kevin's, I don't have Ed's and Gabe's. So those are the ones I'm missing, I think, right now.
Sorry, Colleen, I thought I had sent it. I'll do that right now.
I might have missed it, so if I missed it.
No,
it's
I
my
probably
bad.
didn't.
So I just wanted to make sure, because I don't want you guys to miss out. So it's going to be a great meal and a lot of fun. And then I think that's it. Any other questions for the good of the group? All right, so I'll be popping in as much as I can, but pictures, I would love them. Text them to me, email them to me, whatever. I'd love to see all your smiling faces today, and I'll try to get around and see as many of you as I can at your tours. And then otherwise, we'll be meeting at the end of the day at Serenite for a presentation. They're doing a huge charcuterie board for us, some goat cheese tarts, and some other yummy vegetables. And then you can order a drink from their menu while you're there. That's all paid for by your tuition and Leadership Medina County. So we'll see you throughout the day. Hope you enjoy your tours and your lunch. Thank you.